Most people do not lose touch because they decide the friendship no longer matters. They lose touch, then wait so long that a simple message starts to feel like it needs an explanation. The gap is not the problem. The feeling that the gap now has to be addressed before anything else can be said, that is what keeps the message unsent. It is not that you never think of them, you do. You see something they would have found funny, you pass the place you used to meet, their name appears somewhere ordinary, and for a second, the friendship is close again. Then the second thought arrives. What would I even say now? The strange part is that missing someone can become easier than messaging them, because missing them asks nothing of you, and messaging them asks you to risk the silence having a meaning. So the phone goes back in your pocket, and the friendship does not end dramatically. It simply stays one message away. This episode is about that one message. Not the whole repair of a friendship, not a large emotional conversation, not a speech about what happened between you. Just the first small piece of contact after too much time has passed. Most advice about reconnecting says some version of just reach out. That is not wrong. It is just incomplete. Because the difficult part is rarely the physical act of sending a message. The difficult part is deciding what kind of message the silence now requires. If you believe the silence has to be explained first, the message becomes heavy before it is even written. You start trying to account for every month you did not call, every birthday you missed, every ordinary invitation you let dissolve. And that is when a simple reach out starts to feel like a small trial. The more useful idea is smaller. The first message does not need to explain the silence, it only needs to signal that the relationship still exists. That is a different task. It is less dramatic, more respectful, and often much easier for the other person to answer. The research is more hopeful than most people expect, because the sender and the receiver are often imagining two different moments. The sender imagines awkwardness. The receiver may experience something closer to being remembered. The clearest study for this episode comes from Peggy Liu and colleagues, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 2023. Across a series of pre-registered experiments, they found that people reaching out consistently underestimated how much the recipient appreciated hearing from them. The sender imagines awkwardness. The receiver often experiences something closer to surprise and warmth. That matters because the person writing the message is usually judging the message from the wrong side. You are staring at the blank text box, aware of everything the message does not fix. The other person may be receiving something much simpler. I crossed someone's mind. That does not mean every old friendship should be restarted. It does not mean a message erases harm, betrayal, or a real rupture that needs accountability. But for the ordinary drift most adults know, the research suggests that the emotional cost may look larger to the sender than it feels to the receiver. There is a second piece of evidence that helps. In 2011, Daniel Levin, Jorge Walter, and Keith Murnaghan published research in Organization Science on dormant ties. Dormant ties are relationships that used to be active, then went quiet. In their research on reconnecting with dormant contacts, old ties were not simply useless because time had passed. They could still carry trust, shared history, and a sense of understanding, while also bringing new information because both people had lived different lives since then. In plain English, an old friendship is not the same as a new introduction. There may be dust on it, but there is also stored context. That is why the first message does not have to manufacture closeness from nothing. It can point gently to something that was already real. A third finding comes from Hengchen Dai, Catherine Milkman, and Jason Rees, published in Management Science in 2014. Their work on the fresh start effect found that people often become more willing to act after temporal landmarks, like a new week, a birthday, a holiday, or some other moment that separates the present from the past. For reconnection, this does not mean you need to wait for New Year's Day. It means a small external cue can help the message feel natural. I saw the cafe by the park. I came across that old photo. I heard the song we used to argue about in the car. The cue gives the message a doorway. It lets you begin with the living thread instead of beginning with the absence. Carol is 54 and Denise is the friend she still thinks about more often than Denise would ever know. They used to walk on Saturday mornings, usually the same route. usually ending at the same cafe near the park. There was no argument. There was a divorce, then an empty house, then a period when Carol did not know how to explain herself without sounding like she was asking to be rescued. Denise checked in twice. Carol answered warmly but briefly. Then the rhythm faded. Now, months later, Carol passes the cafe and feels the old friendship arrive in her body before it arrives as a decision. That evening, she opens the message thread. The last message is ordinary. That makes it worse. She types the first version. I know it has been forever and I am sorry I disappeared. Then she stops. The sentence is true enough, but it makes the gap the main character. It asks Denise to step immediately into Carol's guilt before Denise has even been invited back into the friendship. Carol reads it twice and deletes it. Then she writes the second version. I passed the cafe by the park today and thought of our Saturday walks. Would you fancy a coffee there sometime this month? This message does not pretend no time has passed. It simply refuses to make the time past the first thing Denise has to carry. It gives her a memory, a place, and an easy invitation. Robert does the same thing differently. He sees Martin's name on an old project file, and the memory is not tender in the same way. It is dry, practical, almost ridiculous. Martin laughing through a 7 o'clock meeting about the Calder proposal. Robert's first draft says, "It has been far too long. I should have been better about keeping in touch." He looks at it and feels the stiffness immediately, so he deletes it. Then he sends, "Saw the old Calder proposal today and thought of you laughing through that 7 a.m. meeting. Are you around for a coffee next week?" Neither Carol nor Robert explains the silence. They make a specific bid for contact and they make it easy to answer. Here is the practical principle. For ordinary drift, the first message should step over the gap. It should not deny the gap. It should not dramatize the gap. It should simply refuse to make the gap the work the other person has to do first. The first message has one job. It signals that the relationship still exists. That signal works best when it begins with a specific cue. Not, "I was thinking about you," even though that can be kind. More specific. "I passed the cafe by the park. I found the old photo from Lisbon. I saw the Calder proposal. I heard someone say that phrase you used to hate." The cue matters because it tells the other person why they are receiving the message today. It gives the reach out a doorway, so the message does not appear out of nowhere. The next element is a small memory or point of connection, not a long tribute to the friendship. Just enough to remind both of you that the relationship had texture. I thought of our Saturday walks. I remembered how hard we laughed in that meeting. It made me think of the summer we were always in and out of each other's kitchens. This is the part that signals continuity. It says, without saying it directly, there is still something here. Then comes the easy bid. An easy bid is specific enough to answer, but not so intense that it requires the other person to reorganize their emotional life. Would you fancy a coffee sometime this month? Are you around for a call next week? Would you like to take a walk one weekend? Notice what is missing. There is no demand for immediate depth. There is no pressure to explain what happened. There is no sentence that asks the other person to reassure you before they have even decided whether they have the energy to reply. This is why "we should catch up sometime" often fails. It sounds friendly, but it gives the other person work. They have to decide when, where, how serious, how soon, and whether you really mean it. A specific bid lowers the cost of replying. It lets them say yes, suggest another time, or gently decline. The objection is obvious. What if stepping over the gap feels dishonest? What if you feel you should acknowledge that it has been a long time? There are situations where you should. If you hurt them, disappeared during a crisis, ignored something important, or know there is a real injury between you, then the gap is not only a gap, it is part of the relationship's unfinished business. But ordinary drift is different. Ordinary drift is what happens when adult life quietly removes the conditions that kept a friendship alive. The school gate disappears, the office changes, the children leave, the marriage ends, the weekly routine vanishes, and nobody quite knows how to replace it with intention. In that case, beginning with a confession may not be honesty. It may be making the first step heavier than it needs to be. A lighter message can still be sincere. It can carry warmth without carrying a full explanation. If the other person replies, there will be time later for the more honest sentence. I have missed this. I am glad we did this. I did not realize how much I had let drift. Those sentences belong after the door has opened, not necessarily before the first knock. So the test is simple. Read your draft and ask, does this message ask them to deal with my guilt, or does it give them an easy way back into contact? If it asks them to deal with your guilt, simplify it. Find the cue. Name the small memory. Make the easy bid. That is the whole first step. Not the whole friendship, just the first step. The deeper mistake is believing that reconnection has to be equal in size to the silence. 5 years have passed, so the message must somehow contain 5 years. It must explain why you vanished, prove that you cared, account for every missed moment, and make the other person feel that the friendship still matters. No ordinary message can survive that much pressure. So the message is never sent, but relationships are not restored in proportion to the time that has passed. They are restored by small signals that create the next possible moment. You are not asking one message to repair 5 years. You are asking one message to reopen one door. That is why the task can be smaller without being shallow. The message is not saying nothing happened. It is saying something still exists. And if the other person answers, then the relationship has a new present tense. Not the old friendship exactly. Not a guaranteed return. Just a present tense. That may be enough for one coffee. And one coffee is often more than the unsent message was ever allowed to become. Somewhere in your phone or in your memory, there may be a person whose name still has weight, not necessarily the most dramatic person, not the person you need to have a difficult reckoning with, just someone who still returns to mind. Before you ask whether the whole friendship can be rebuilt, ask a smaller question. What is one small specific thing you could say to that person that steps over the gap rather than explaining it? Hold on that. Not the apology you might owe in a different situation. Not the full story of where you have been. One cue, one memory, one easy bid. If this is the kind of question you want to keep thinking about carefully, the Connection Letter is a free weekly research digest I send every Saturday. One finding, one thing to try, one question. The link is in the description.